Hey, welcome back, and thanks for joining us live on this live forecast. I see we've already got people hopping on here. Hurricane Francine has already been upgraded to a Category 2 hurricane. That just happened just a few minutes ago. So we wanted to jump on here and give you an update as this hurricane is making landfall. Once again, we have our CEO at Hail Trace, Derek Klein, with us. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and Derek, we've seen some changes just over the last few hours. We talked with you this morning at 10 a.m. and in the last 6-7 hours, we have seen some changes. I'm going to go ahead and pop your screen up here. What have you seen in the last 6 hours here, and what are we expecting to see as this makes landfall?
Yeah, so we've been monitoring this, and it's making landfall as we speak. So landfall is basically now. I'm not sure the exact time that they'll give it. I assume it'll be somewhere around 4:45, maybe 5 p.m. Central Time, and it's going to be right in here, just south of Morgan City. Here you can see the purple line is the actual coastline, and you can see the shutoff of the rain has now made landfall. So it's basically making landfall as we speak. Should move. It might wobble just a little east of Morgan City, but that just means Morgan City is taking the brunt of this thing. But as it made landfall, it did intensify a little bit. You can kind of see that intensification. If you remember earlier when we were tracking the hurricane with the flight, remember the plane flying through the system. We actually have a lot more yellow dots now than we did earlier. And yellow dots are an indicator of sustained hurricane force winds. They only drop these over the ocean, so you only see the plots out over the ocean. They don't want to drop them, through someone's roof or something like that. But it did get a little bit stronger. You can see the pressure there was 974. That's column D. That was the lowest pressure that they got. And the highest wind gust that they got was 75 knots. They've actually got it set intensity-wise at 85 knots right now. And I assume that's based off of maybe some actual readings that they received or some gusts that they have received from this as it's making landfall right now. So currently the strongest actual surface observation that I've seen is out of Morgan City, which is what we would expect. So they currently have sustained winds right at tropical storm force with gusts just a little bit under hurricane force. But the brunt of the wind, we'll zoom in here and I'll give you a little bit of a better idea of where the strongest winds are going to be, believe it or not, in this little bit of light green right here. And then in this, see the green band that goes through Morgan City? That is actually the dividing line between tropical storm and hurricane force. So the hurricane force will be in this pocket right here. And as anytime it's raining, it's going to mix the stronger winds to the surface inside of the hurricane, and that's where you'll see the strongest wind. But it'll be right along the edge of where there is rain and no rain. That's where the strongest winds will be in the hurricane. So right now, just off of this little island right here, some potentially strong winds, and the pink box actually says is showing us the areas under a tornado watch. So we do have a tornado watch as well. I would say, boy, I don't know how to say all these Louisiana towns here. Duloc, Roy, Homa is this one right here. Homa is going to take one of the stronger hits from this hurricane. Thibodaux is right up here. All of this area, which took a really strong hit from Ida, I believe, was the hurricane, the Cat 4 hurricane. Homa took a really, really strong. Lockport took a really strong hit. Raceland. This was the area that we chased Ida in. So fairly familiar with the terrain and the area here. This one making landfall on the other side of Homa. So if you remember, Ida actually made landfall just down here east of Grand Isle and then swung up this way. Francine is kind of moving the opposite direction, coming from the west and moving more towards the east. But wind speeds right now, again, right on the coast here. I would say right south of Morgan City, they're receiving winds, probably some gusts in the 90 to 100 mile per hour range. Same thing over here. I don't know how you say this little town right here. I'm not even going to try. But right in here, right on the coast here, Leeville, um, you're probably seeing some 70 to 80 to 90 to 100 mile per hour gusts in this location as well. In fact, the hurricane hunters have picked it up right here. So that's hurricane force winds, 71 right here on the coast, 72, 72, 73. And these are sustained, 71, 71. So these are 10-second increments. 71. So yeah, so and right here they're picking up the lowest pressure at 970 millibars. So essentially, it's made landfall now. Right here, this is your lowest pressure. So we'll call it a landfall around 4:40 p.m. And I don't know what this location is going to be called, but we'll find out soon. Just south of Gibson and south of Morgan City. So we should have an official landfall now of Hurricane Francine. And if we look at it on satellite too, if we zoom out here, I'm going to turn the radar off and the hurricane stuff off. There we go. So it gives us a little better picture of it via satellite. So we've got flood warnings and we've got special marine statements, potentially for water spouts or strong winds. But you can see the bottom half, see how it's losing that kind of convective look, that real crisp look to the clouds.
Yeah.
And if we loop it, what we're going to see is, looks like we got to load some frames in here. But as this loop begins to come in, what you're going to be able to see is the southern edge of it now. It's like as soon as it hits land, the hurricane knows, oh, I'm done.
Yeah.
It's gonna allow that wind shear that it's been able to somewhat insulate itself from. It's gonna really kick in now. You're gonna see it just kind of almost like blow off to the north and east. So everything will just blow right up over Gulfport and Hattiesville, Meridian, Jackson. And then kind of lift straight off to the north, and we'll still have an eye wall, but it'll only be a northern half. So the southern half, which we're seeing already, if I turn radar back on, the southern half of the eye has already started to decay, and so you can see a little bit still here and a little bit here. This hole, it'll just open up, and only the area that you see over Houma and Morgan City will be left by about the time it gets to northern Louisiana. So it won't take very long. It'll still be strong. It'll still be a pretty strong tropical storm at that point, with some 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts, which can definitely down some trees and power lines, and then can make it pretty dangerous out there to drive around and move around. But it won't be the same storm anymore. So quickly losing its power, but impacts.
Yeah.
Right now, Morgan City, you're taking it. Houma, you're taking it. Homa's getting some significant rainfall too here. If you look at this flash flood warning, so let's see if they say how much rain they've had. So between half an inch and an inch and a half of rain have fallen. Additional 1 to 3 inches of rain are expected. So they're getting some significant rain here. On the order of 4 to 6 inches probably by the time this thing is over with. And the size of the eye too. I think Taylor, we were just talking about this. That puts New Orleans. Look how big this eye is. It's almost 50. It's actually over 50 miles across. So the eastern eye wall will scrape through New Orleans, and the western eye wall will scrape through Baton Rouge. That's just how big this system
Wow.
is. From
That's
Baton Rouge,
impressive. And now, with a big eye wall like that, if that eye wall was a little bit smaller, maybe some of those circulations a little bit tighter, do you think that we could see a stronger hurricane out of this, or do you think the size of the eye wall doesn't really matter? We're talking about that dry air getting in there earlier. That may have been, more impacting to this just falling apart.
Yeah, the dry air is most likely the reason why the eye is the size that it is. So the larger typically the larger the eye, it doesn't mean that it can't be a strong hurricane. Katrina is a great example. It was a massive eye on Katrina, but when Katrina was at its peak intensity, when it was a Cat 5, it did have a very compact eye. So compact meaning somewhere between 15 and 25 miles across, so half the size of Florence's eye. But think about it as a momentum, right? So think about how much work it takes to make a big wheel spin versus a smaller wheel. And so that's essentially what you're looking at here is we've got a really big wheel, just takes a lot more work to get that wheel to spin around.
To move. No, that makes sense. Yeah, no, and you can also see from some of those earlier satellite frames that we really did have some good organization with this, some good circulation just before it made landfall, which probably aided in the intensification of the storm to a Category 2. But now, the second that thing hit land, it just kind of started to fall apart.
Yeah, I would assume we're probably back down to a Category 1. Most likely, the folks that received Category 2 intensity are going to be right here on the coast. Right in this area. It's going to be fairly limited to right on the coast. But what it does mean is that the hurricane force winds, because it had that little extra intensification, the hurricane force winds might go a little bit further inland. So, expect to see some hurricane force gusts, all the way up here in Hammond. Right now, if you're in Hammond, you're getting some heavy rain. But winds are gusting at 21 knots, 30 miles an hour. I think it was blowing harder than that in Oklahoma today. At least if it wasn't today, it was yesterday, right? So it's always blowing harder than that in Oklahoma.
Just on a sunny day.
Right, but it happens quick when the winds come in. So you can see New Orleans now getting gusts to 37 knots. Those aren't miles per hour. So that's about 45 mile per hour, 50 mile per hour winds. That's pretty windy for parts of New Orleans. We're at 36 knots there on the east side, 27 knots on the south side. And these are just, a picture in time, right? So as this thing comes on, these winds are going to go up, up, up. Even over here in Golden Meadow, east southeast at 15 knots, gusting to 30 knots. I'm sure those have gone up. That was, I think that image was taken about an hour ago. So I assume, and we might get the update here while we're watching, but I assume those will be much more significant on the next update, probably on the order of 50 to 60 miles per hour, maybe even some 70 mile per hour gusts in Golden Meadow. So that's just how quick it happens. It's you kind of go through this period of subtropical storm winds, and then you go through a couple hours of tropical storm force winds, and then the hurricane hits, which is really just confined to right here on this core. It's not a big area. Because of the size of the eye, this is going to be a little bit bigger path, but it's going to be confined to this right, within this rain-free area here. It's going to be confined to within 5 to 10 miles of that. That's the hurricane force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the other hazards that they have. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think we may have been on the same page there. On the other hazards, that we're watching for here, obviously that flooding risk with just these torrential rain, downpours, heavy rain with this, and then of course that tornado risk as well, which we've been talking about from some of those outer bands, which we're not just going to see right now, but also through this evening and even late tonight into early tomorrow morning, not just in Louisiana, but all the way to and through the Florida Panhandle.
Yeah. I mean, right now we've got the tornado watch through all the southern counties here of Mississippi. And really the area that I'm interested in, there's two spots that I would be tracking for potential tornadic activity. Or really, actually three here looking at the radar here, kind of zoomed out. So this band right here, that's kind of going through the delta here of Louisiana, and then it's kind of touching here the edge of Mississippi. This band right here, especially where it's north to south oriented, we'd have to watch this area. We definitely want to watch some of these storms that are out here in the Gulf as well. They haven't produced much yet, but I would definitely think water spouts, and then as those come ashore, those can produce tornadoes. And then the third area is right along the eye wall, right on the edge of the eye wall. Sometimes, as the wind starts to go up and down, as the eye itself comes in, it creates these little spin up tornadoes. And I can promise you those will not be warned. There will be no warning of those. They will happen in about 20 seconds. They'll be there, they'll be gone, but in 20 seconds, they'll move several miles. So they'll hit, they are moving. But what they do is they enhance the already strong wind. So you've got winds maybe 70, 80 miles an hour, and then you have a tornado embedded in that. And they're usually weak tornadoes, but when the tornado is moving at 70 to 80, and it's, even if it has 40 or 50, that could be 110, 120 mile per hour winds,
Wow.
really, really quickly out of nowhere. And can really enhance the damage, especially if you've been taking wind for, a couple of hours already.
Yeah, that's something that I think some of our Oklahoma viewers on here may not think about is, you get these these tornadic storms in Oklahoma, and you get those strong winds for a few minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes. But with these hurricane force winds, you're getting this for hours at a time. You're getting those 40, 50, 60 mile per hour wind speeds for hours. And then you get a gust that comes, whether it's from a tornado or it's hurricane force gusts. That just really intensifies the damage that you could see in an area. It's not just a short-lived thing, but this is going to be lasting for quite some time here.
Yeah, for sure. And then this one's moving at a fairly quick pace. The flooding's going to be minimal compared to many hurricanes that we've seen in the U.S. We're talking 4 to 6 inches of rain. I don't know how many hurricanes I've seen drop 20, 30, 40 inches of rain. The impacts are fairly quick. What do we got? It's currently moving at 17 miles an hour, which is very quick, and
Yeah, it's
that
picked
can
up speed a
also,
lot.
yeah, that can also cause this to not intensify as fast. Fast moving hurricanes tend not to intensify as fast as a slower moving hurricane would. But yeah, this one's moving. 17 miles an hour is getting it. Um, you know, so
That's pretty impressive because we started out whenever this was, I think, just a tropical storm, 5 miles an hour, hurricane about 7 miles an hour, and just within the last 24, even 12 hours here, it's just really picked up speed and also shifted a little bit to the east. I don't know if we've talked about that yet or not, but this is kind of on the eastern side of that cone. And that's why
mhm.
we say that that eye could be anywhere within that cone, the cone of uncertainty. That's the map that everyone out there, that's what you usually see for the track of the hurricane. The eye can be anywhere within that cone. And we're kind of on the eastern side of where the National Hurricane Center originally put this hurricane. So I think they still did a really good job forecasting it, but it did take a little bit of a turn to the east just within the last few hours here.
Yeah, it did for sure. I would call the forecast, a really great forecast from the National Hurricane Center on this particular system, mainly because it was still inside of the original cone that they produced.
Yeah.
It made landfall in the cone, which is what we want. They also, it's a 100-mile-per-hour hurricane. They nailed the intensity, which that's actually one of the harder ones to nail. If you go and do some research on their average miss, it's pretty significant. 48 hours out. So for them, and they fluctuated back and forth from 80 to 90 to 100, but they were in the ballpark, and I think final forecast going into yesterday was still 90 to 100 mile an hour hurricane, even with it delaying its intensification.
Yeah, and we saw that delay, and then it kind of just picked up speed at the very end. It was like, I want this to verify, and there we go. We verify, or the Francine verified what the National Hurricane Center had.
They were in cahoots together.
I like that. Next time I get a forecast wrong, I'm going to just say the storm changed its mind. It's the storm's fault. It's not my fault.
Like kids, they don't want to listen. So,
I like that. Well, I know that we've kind of talked about that tornado risk here. We've also talked about this moving onshore. I don't know if you want to go into any forecasting or any other hurricane hunter stuff. Also, for everyone who is listening live right now, I can see your comments in the comments section. We've got Jan watching. We've got Orlando watching. We've got a lot of Johnny is watching on here. So we appreciate you putting that in the comments section. Let us know if you have any questions for Derek. We've got another 10-ish minutes on here that we can ask questions and take a look at the data. But yeah, just put your comments in the comments section. I can see them on here.
yeah, and some scenarios for you guys to think about if you have curiosity around what would it be like to be in this. If you were do you ever wonder if I were on the coast, what would I be experiencing? And I've been there. I've done that. So more than happy to answer any questions that you might have about those conditions that they're receiving there. That's always a fun thing to look into. Um, Future forecasts. How quick is it going to weaken? There are lots of different things, and I'll try to cover some of those. But if you guys have questions, shoot them in there, because that's the best way for me to specifically answer, something more specific. And I think that's something that kind of sets this feed apart, is that we have that ability to answer some more specific questions and targeted questions to help you guys out. So anyway,
I
but go ahead.
I was thinking earlier because I was watching some of these street cameras, and
Mhm.
seeing just how fast some of these roads filled up with water and how you could see the water cover the road pretty quickly. And these are on the outskirts, right along the shore here. But the terrain down there. How fast does it take for some of these roads to flood? Is it, just a few inches of rain, or do you really get that storm surge and then it starts to flood on these roads?
So the storm surge it's a whole different animal than the street flooding. So they do get street flooding. Just like, in fact, when we were in Ida, that was a big concern that we had, was street flooding in different areas, and we have some video of some pretty significant street flooding, and really all hurricanes that we do, and sometimes that takes a little while to go down. Now the storm surge itself, if we're looking at the current conditions there. And like where are we receiving storm surge right now? So the biggest storm surge is going to be in this little bay right here. Um, they're gonna take the biggest hit, and so that would be the area, and that's because the water is literally, it's kind of following these bands, but it's just being pulled right in. But the storm surge, it's kind of like a gradual rise until right before the eye gets there. And then right as the eye comes on, if you're on the side of the storm surge, it rapidly comes in, like to the point that you can't outrun it. And I think that's the scary part about storm surge, is how fast it actually comes in. And so it can be a couple of feet rise in water within five to 10 minutes. It can be several feet of rise in
Wow.
water. So it happens very quickly. And again, it's not something that you can just outrun it. I mean, if you've got
Yeah.
high grades, within a block or something, yeah, you can get there. But if you're down on the coast and it comes in, and you've got some distance between you and higher ground, and by distance I mean a few blocks. It could trap you in there, because it happens that fast. Um, so my experience was, I think we rose by 2 foot, in Biloxi, Mississippi. We went to 6 foot, and I don't know how fast we went from nothing to 6 foot. But we went from about a foot of water to 3 foot of water, in about 3 minutes. Um,
Wow.
it
Wow.
like Yeah, like you're driving, and all of a sudden the water is halfway up the door, and you better have a spot to be in. Um,
And that's not just standing water. That water is rushing. It's moving. It's going somewhere.
yeah, there's waves in it. There's not to mention there's 90 to 100 mile per hour winds happening, and very heavy rain falling as well. So it's a crazy active stretch that you're in there. And
Wow.
yeah, there's your probably verified landfall there, 972. But that's going to be their landfall right there. Is that little
972.
V that popped up right there? We'll see. I just refreshed the National Hurricane Center. They haven't officially said, they haven't given the landfall update yet.
I was doing the
Maybe
same
they just
thing.
did. Actually, I think they just did. Let's see here. Francine made landfall in southern Louisiana in the parish of Terrebonne, about 30 miles south-southwest of Morgan City. As a Category 2 hurricane, maximum sustained winds are estimated to be near 100 miles per hour. The NOS station located on Eugene Island recently reported a peak gust of 105 miles per hour. So that's on shore, that's on an island. So they have measured gusts to 105 miles per hour. The minimum pressure at that location was 976, so we know it wasn't in the center. The center would be 972, and so that's where the calm winds would be. So they're really close to the edge. I'm gonna make a guess that that island is. Let's see if we can see it. I don't know if we can see it on here or not.
Like really zoom into it.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that would be at. Let's see if we can turn off some stuff and see. It's kind of all marshland here, so.
Yeah, it's hard to see. I pulled it up on Google Maps. It's really hard to see, but we were talking earlier about, and I'm not quite sure I know how to say this. Huma, is that correct?
Homa.
That
Homa
is within the parish. Homa.
Yes.
That is within the parish.
So
that they're
right
saying
there.
landfall.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so here's Morgan City. They said it was 30 miles south-southwest. I think they said south-southwest, which is interesting because that would be over here. I guess you could give that a south-southwest to that dot. That's where we thought it would be. So that's what they're going to call this, the landfall. And I mean, one of the weather stations could be on one of these little islands right here. You've got these barrier islands here, it looks like. So I'm not sure. I pulled up some weather data here just to see if I see any like crazy winds. It's hard to get them all. So on this particular location, the highest I've got is 54 miles per hour. Homa is not reporting though, so Homa has lost their data.
I think they probably lost some pretty widespread power in this area because I was watching the Department of Transportation cameras as well, and they have not been reading for at least an hour now. So they probably have. And I was also looking at Louisiana power outages. We've got about 27,000 people without power. Let me see if I can share this screen real quick. 27,000 people without power. The majority of that looks like it is down in that parish that we were just talking about. Let's see if I can share the screen real quick. Maybe. This is going to work. Oh, there we go. Okay, yes. So we've got 27,000 without power across Louisiana. Most of those, down in, and how'd you say that earlier? Terrebonne? 27,000 without
I don't know how
power
you
in
say
the
Terrebonne.
parish.
That might be right. I know Homa is how you say the main little city in that town or in that parish. Now New Orleans hasn't even really got started yet. I promise you're going to see New Orleans will be the hot spot on this map when this is done. New Orleans will have more power outages than every other county.
Wow.
Even though they're not going to take a direct hit, I promise they will have more power outages. And they're going to take a pretty significant hit. There will be gusts of wind at least over 80 in New Orleans. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody, if one of the airports or one of the little local stations, one of the weather instruments gets very close, if not taps 100 miles per hour. So when this gets a little bit closer, so
that'll definitely be something to watch. And I'll keep an eye on the power outages. Derek, if you want to share your screen,
sure,
and go back to what we were looking at earlier, you're more than welcome to, or we can take a look at some of the cameras across New Orleans.
Yeah, let's do some cameras. Yeah, let's see what it looks like is going on.
Alrighty. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, so I think you can see that now.
There we go.
Okay, so this is in New Orleans. And we'll kind of just do around we usually call it around the radar whenever I'm going and looking at the radar. So we'll do kind of a version of that just around New Orleans. You can see how many cameras we have, but I did want to show you, I mentioned earlier that Homa did stop sharing their cameras
Okay.
about an hour ago. None of these are receiving any type of information.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything over there, but we'll go back up to New Orleans here.
You know what's interesting on that New Orleans map is it's what is it? Is it 5 o'clock in New Orleans right now? Right
Yeah.
on a what Wednesday afternoon, 5 o'clock. I would consider that right in the heart of rush hour, and I did
And
not see a single. I mean, there was one car I think driving down the highway. So how about that?
And we may be getting some power outages over here as well because a few of them are not sharing their. Yeah, you can see the winds. I don't know if you can see that, the winds.
You can, yeah, you can see. I mean, obviously that's they're doing some construction on the side of that building, but it's obviously somewhat windy. I mean, it's not crazy windy, but enough that they're gonna have to redo some of that work again, and it's just gonna get
Yeah.
worse. They haven't even really got started yet in New Orleans.
All of these cameras are do what?
They could have went to work today in New Orleans.
But yeah, beforehand.
But no flooding. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
Everything was, just wet.
And it was raining harder earlier here.
Yeah. Let's see what the radar shows here while you're doing that. I'll just take a peek at it.
All of these cameras are kind of doing a little dance for us. They're moving around because it is so windy. It looks like we're seeing a little bit of movement from some of these street lights as well.
They're definitely in a little bit of a lull right now in New Orleans on the rainfall. So the first wave has moved to the north up by Slidell and Hammond. So it's pretty heavy rain up there. There's a little bit of a break, and then the next one is when it really goes downhill. So I would say in the next 2 to 3 hours, New Orleans is going to go downhill pretty rapidly.
We'll have to keep an eye on our cameras if they are still sending feeds at that time, because something I've noticed, because I like to watch these street cams, is these are the first things to go out. Are these street cameras?
It's a healthy hurricane. Again, low end Cat 2 hurricane making landfall. So we've had two Cat 1s so far this year, I think, right? One in Florida and one in Texas, and now a low end Cat 2 hurricane for Louisiana. So not a crazy super impactful hurricane season so far, but an active one with three hurricanes is I would definitely say above average for the U.S. for the number of hurricanes in a year.
Yeah, and we have here. Let me see if I can share my screen to this page. We have a few more systems at least to watch on the docket here. After Francine is done, our attention is going to turn back out to the east. And let me make sure you guys can see that. Yep. We've got disturbance 2 with a 10% chance of cyclone formation within the next 48 hours. We've got another one with a 30% chance. And if you head a little bit farther out to the east here, this is a fish storm right now. However, it does look like it's going to be sustained for quite some time as it continues to track to the west, a little bit closer to more populated areas by Sunday. Maybe this is something to watch for, but it is expected to strengthen to a tropical storm within the next 24 hours, less than that here.
And right now,
disturbance
the models are showing. If you take a look at some of the computer models, they've been pretty consistent, especially the GFS. I haven't looked at all of them. Have been pretty consistent at something forming on Saturday or Sunday off the coast of South and North Carolina, and then making landfall. Most likely, I mean, it looks fairly weak right now as a tropical storm, maybe, or a tropical depression. So rain would probably be the biggest threat, but Again, you never. I mean, warm water's out there as well, so just never know. We'll have to watch those these time of year. But that would be like a Sunday Monday type of potential landfall for the Carolinas. So we'll have to watch that.
And I mean, it's Wednesday already, so if that's something that is going to happen, I hope that people are aware of that, that people are not complacent over the weekend, because you kind of get into those human habits of, oh, well, there's nothing out there right now. You hang out during the weekend, and then all of a sudden you have to evacuate by Monday or by Monday night. So I hope that
Right.
people are keeping an eye on that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the local. I'm actually in North Carolina, so we'll see if the local weather's talking about it tonight when maybe I can watch a little weather coverage and see what they're saying about it.
You're
I
not
know.
out there to storm chase, but you could do some storm chasing.
Right? I was like, well, I've got my my RV out here. I was like, I'm gonna get that out of here before that comes in.
You don't want to storm chase in an RV?
Not today. Not today. Maybe another time.
Well, Derek, I've kept you over this 30 minutes here. Do you want to go into any other forecasting or take another look at the tropical system? I don't want to keep you too long here. I was looking to see if we had any
No,
questions.
yeah. See if we have any questions. I'm taking one last look here. Again, definitely landfall has occurred. Sustained winds 100. That's going to be mainly offshore, just to kind of recap, right onto the coast. But we have had gust measured onshore at 105. So the gust can be over the sustained, and those gusts can definitely do some damage. But I would say, again, right now they still have it listed as a Cat 2 hurricane. Next update, it should not be. So we'll expect to see that begin to weaken. It should fall out of hurricane status sometime probably after midnight tonight. But expect hurricane force wind gust in New Orleans, and those should start to begin. I would say after 8 o'clock, so sometime between the 8 o'clock and 10 p.m. hour, and then those will probably go on from about 8 to 10 o'clock until probably 2, 3 in the morning. So they'll have 3 to 5 of a gust up to and over 75 miles per hour across really all of New Orleans. So expect a lot of power outages, expect trees down, some shingles blown off, all that type of stuff, and that'll carry up into Slidell and Hammond. And then the wind threat should start to subside. We'll just kind of start to see trees and power lines down as we get up into Mississippi, as the wind speeds come down, start to drop back into the 60s. Again, gust into the 60s as it moves into Mississippi. So I think that's what we'll see. 4 to 6 inches of rain, not crazy for this area, but will cause some flash flooding, but nothing like they haven't seen before. The big threat right now, I would say, biggest threat is just dangerous conditions because of heavy rain and wind combined. So, and that should be, you'll wake up in Louisiana, and this will be over with tomorrow morning when you wake up. So cleanup begins at sunrise tomorrow, which is nice to be able to move on.
Yeah, absolutely. This is moving really quickly, so it's out of here very quickly. But well, we appreciate you jumping on here today. I'm gonna bring us back to here. As always, we're going to keep an eye on this. We're going to make sure that we are watching as the conditions get more intense in New Orleans over the next hour or two. I'll keep an eye on those cameras for you guys. And if you have any pictures, send them our way or tag us in those on social media if you safely take those pictures. We will be watching this and we'll be giving you guys more updates. We do a live forecast every single day, every single weekday at noon, and then we update our TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere you can find anyone on social media. We'll be there updating everything. So Derek, we appreciate you jumping on here today in your travels. So I think we're going to hop off of here. We appreciate it. Thanks everyone for watching.